It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by Ray White, the largest real estate and property group in Australasia.
And welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Podcast. Property, it's in our DNA here at the Real Estate Podcast as we interview leading contributors to the real estate industry. Deals are being done every hour, every 10 minutes and every 90 seconds somewhere across Australia. Actually, Rich, I don't know if deals are done every 90 seconds or not, but it does sound possible.
Well, they actually are. I quickly calculated the numbers, Craig, before you started, and around 500,000 properties are transacted every single year in Australia. And if you divide that by the number of seconds in a year, it's actually about one done every 63 seconds.
Wow. Okay, thanks for telling us that. Okay, so joining us is Rich Harvey from Property Buyer. We know that it's a hot market. How are you finding the start of 2022?
Well, it's interesting. 2021 was a crazy hot year. So I think in 2022, we're going to start to see the market still growing, but at a much slower rate. It's not going to see that white hot market and that really frenetic activity where we saw 13 bidders at an auction every time and prices going well above reserve. I think it'll be a much more subdued market. There'll be a lot more listings and the buyers will finally have choice. So I think we're going to see a more normalised and balanced market, particularly as we head toward the second half of 2022.
You would have been glad to have had that time out with family at Christmas time and just, a little bit of recalibration.
Absolutely. It was been a frenetic year and just really enjoyed the downtime. It was wonderful.
And where do you see the market going long term into 2022?
I think interest rates will stay on hold, Craig, for the majority of, for 2022. The Reserve Bank has said that there's no rush to raise rates until wages and inflation is sustainably higher than it currently is. And obviously, we've got a post-COVID recovery to get through. Even though some businesses have done very well, there's others that have done very badly and been significantly affected. So in terms of how that translates into the property market, there was an incredibly hot demand, particularly during lockdowns when there was very little stock available. And we had people making major lifestyle changes and wanting better quality properties. And their demand rose around 25% above normal, but listing volumes were down 30%. So you had this incredible seesaw imbalance between supply and demand during 2021. So what I'm saying is that seesaw is going to swing back the other way in 2022. And as I said, buyers should have a bit more choice and a bit more opportunity. So I think you probably see a growth rate in Sydney and Melbourne around 5%, maybe pushing 7%. But by the end of the year, I think it'll start to slow down.
People, particularly first home buyers listening to the podcast right now, are thinking Rich is their new best friend. More stock. It's like Christmas time, isn't it? They'll be really hoping that is the case, which kind of leads into this question. What would you say to people who think that they have completely and utterly missed the boat with the property market in 2022?
Look, I get asked this question every day. Have I missed the boat? Should I buy now or should I wait? The problem with waiting to buy real estate is that the boat will get further and further away from the shore. So I say to people, get on the boat. Whether you think the market's at the peak or you think it's at the bottom, it's not irrelevant, but it's not as important as using your borrowing power and your buying power to get onto a rung of the property ladder. I'm out there buying myself right now. People would go, Rich, you're crazy. It's the top of the market. Well, I'm still finding opportunities. So when you have the ability to buy and get into the market, and everyone needs a roof over their head, and everyone should be thinking about investing in property because we're not building enough in this country, I would say to people, you haven't missed the boat. There are still opportunities to get in. It is just a matter of looking at your expectation. And if you're a first home buyer, look, you're not going to get the Taj Mahal. You're going to have to particularly get a 1 or 2 bedroom unit, right? And then you live in that for a couple of years, then you upgrade to the townhouse. So I think it's very much a matter of having a rational approach to getting into the market, not overextending yourself, but extending yourself enough to get into property. Because what I say to people, if you don't spend your money on property, you'll probably spend it on something else.
And people's expectation, particularly around the location of where they want to live. No doubt last year, you probably had to move people an extra suburb or two out from where they actually wanted to be. And that is just a matter of circumstance, isn't it, in this hot market?
Very much so, Craig. We find that people can't necessarily live in the same suburb as their parents. If you want to live in Mossman, your median house price is sort of 4.5, almost 5 million. If you want to live in Blacktown, then, possibly it's around 900,000. So look, at the end of the day, you have to decide how and where you're going to live, and also live within your means. And a lot of that, what we call ripple effect of growth, has happened. As people are unable to afford a certain suburb, they have to consider the adjoining suburbs. But that's also been a good thing for those fringe areas. Some suburbs that have been considered a bit daggy or a bit down and out, they've actually become more gentrified as a result of this sort of growth that's happening. So what I say to people is, look, you may not live in this suburb forever, but make it a start, make it an opportunity or a stepping stone to something better in the future.
Well, you have offered up once again some valuable information, Rich. Great to talk and offer those sound advices around property buyers space. And thanks once again for coming on to the Real Estate Podcast.
That's a pleasure, Craig. Anytime.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.